Hey coders, welcome to another exciting video on this channel where we are building a full stack web application for real estate business using PHP. This is going to be probably the last video in the series because we have covered almost every logic. The only part that remains is this contact us form. So we have this contact us form at two places. This is one of the places on our property detail page where we have this contact us form, and the other place we have is on our landing page. At the very end we have this contact us form. So the first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to convert this into a twig macro, because then we won't have to repeat the logic at these two places. Rather, we will call that macro wherever we want to insert this contact us form. So let me open first of all this home view, home.twig. Now if you notice, we have this form over here, and the other place where we have this form is property.twig, and again we have this form over here. So we are repeating this code at two different places. Now we are going to convert this into a macro. So for that, let's copy this part and comment this out over here. Let's go to the macros.twig and let's come down. Let's define a macro. The name we are going to give this macro is contact. Params, let's keep it for the time being, then we'll figure out what we need to place in as params. But in between these opening and curly tags, let's space break this form. So action is empty at the moment, and we need to add in the method, which is going to be post method. Because this is a form, so it's going to be submitted, we need a post method for the data to be securely traveled to the backend. Okay. The other thing that we need to do is we are going to convert the type from button to submit, because otherwise we won't be able to submit the form. Now we have this macro. Now let's go to the property.twig, and over here, so from template, over here we have to write the name of the macro file. So the name of the macro file is macros.twig. And from there, we are importing just one macro, which is contact. So now we have imported this macro. Now all we need to do is insert that macro over here. For that, we are going to use the double curly brackets, and the name is contact. Currently, it has params, but let's keep it empty. We are not passing any params. And let's see if this works for the time being in the browser. So let's go to the contact us, refresh, not contact us, home. And let's go to the featured, click any property, and this is the form, just to be sure that we are not getting any cache data. So let's open the developers tools, and we are still seeing this contact us form. That means we are seeing this contact us form from the macro. So now we can safely delete this. Now let's go to the home.twig, and over here let me just go back to the property.twig and copy this part. Copy, let's go to home.twig. So before placing in or inserting that macro, let's save it and see if this form is removed. So for that, let's go to the landing page. And now where do we need to go? We need to go to the contact us section. And over here, as you can see, the form is missing. So now we are going to insert the macro. So paste. From macros.twig, import contact, and over here we are calling this contact macro. Refresh, and we got the form back. Okay, so now we have to work on the backend logic. So let's start with the contact us form on the landing page. So basically the logic that we are supposed to implement is when this form is submitted, the data is sent to the backend where this request is processed, and based on whether the request has been processed successfully or not, we get a notification from the backend in the form of a toast message, which displays whether the message was sent successfully or something happened and the message was not successfully sent. And if the client wants, they can try to send the message again. So that means when the request is sent to the server, then from the server, the reply should come back to the same page over here, along with some toast notification over here. So that's our main goal. That is, once the form is submitted, meaning a request has been sent to the server, the reply should come back to the same page, which is whatever page we are currently present. So what we are going to do is, the first thing that we have to do is, let's go to the macros. And over here, we have to place in some URL over here where the form should get submitted. Now, in order to send the request to the server, we need to define some URL or route over here. That means we need to have some unique route defined. So that means we have to go to the index.php file where we have defined all the routes. So we need a new route which is going to handle the request at the server side. So let's copy paste this part, and because it's going to be a post request, so change it from get to post, and let's give it a unique route name. Let's make it contact us contact-us, that's the URL, and the controller, well, we can make this home controller capture this request and handle that as well. But because we have form at two different places, over here at the landing page and then over here in the on the property details page. So our aim is, or our requirement is, once the form is submitted, we should be redirected back to the same page from where this form is submitted. That means we can't use this home controller. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create a unique controller which is going to request any contact us form related requests. So let's define a new contact controller, and let's define the method which is going to handle it is contact us. So we have a contact controller which has a method named contact us, and whenever the URL, a post URL is /contact-us, this request will be handled by this contact controller's contact us method. So now we have to define this contact controller. So to the controllers, we are going to define another controller, contact controller.php. And let's start with the by controller. Let's copy paste some basic details. So let's copy up to this part, copy, now close it, and over here paste it. So the namespace, because it's in the controllers part, so the namespace is going to remain same. We don't need to communicate with the database, so let's remove this namespace. However, we are going to use this parent controller, so we need this controller. Since we are not using database, so let's remove it. And now because we don't need to use this database instantiation, so that means the only thing in the constructor that is left is instantiation of the parent controller, which is this controller over here. Now the thing is this, basically if you look at this constructor, which is part of this, let's change the name from by to contact as well. Let's place in closing brackets as well. Now this constructor is this contact controller class's default constructor. Why default? Because we are not passing any parameters, and if you notice, it's not doing anything in the body of this constructor as well. So basically we can remove this part altogether. In the other controllers, we needed to define this default constructor because in the default constructor, we needed to instantiate a database class. And once we do that, the chain of this default constructor calling the parent default constructor gets broken down. So therefore, we had to place in this statement as well. But now since we don't need to instantiate the database, we don't need to do this statement either. As a result, we can completely eliminate this part, and now whenever this contact controller is instantiated, its default constructor calls the default constructor of this parent controller. So we are set over here. Now we need to define this method, contact us method. So public function contact us, and this is the body. So what do we need to place over here? So for the time being, what we are going to do is when we receive this request, we just want to display what data have we received from the form. So echo preformatted text, copy paste, closing text, and within the body print our $_post global variable. So this will have all the data sent from the form. And then we want to exit. Let's go to the macro, and we have to define the route over here. So double curly brackets, and the route is going to be this one, contact us. So let's place in this route contact-us, and let's see if we get the data. Let's refresh. Sorry, we are supposed to go to the home page and then contact us. And let's write something, email something, add something.com and some text. Send the message, and we got the data. Name is DD, M, and email and everything. So we are successfully getting the data. That means the request is being successfully received by this contact us method. Now let's comment this out for the time being. So the first step is going to be handle the form request. So whatever is asked in the request, handle that part. Basically over here what happens is now this data is sent as an email to whoever is handling those contact related requests. So basically send the data as email to the admin, let's say. Now once the email gets sent successfully to the admin, we have to let the customer know that your request has been successfully received. And if for some reason this is not possible, then again we need to inform the customer that your request can't be processed at the time. So please try again later. So basically we need a message to send back to the client. However, over here we have to ensure that we are going back to the landing page. So we need two things to do here. One, we need a message to let the customer know if the request got received successfully or not. And then we need to redirect the customer back to the same page from where the form was submitted. Okay, so we need these two things. So let's ignore this first step for the time being. Let's start with redirecting the customer back to the same page. So we already know if the request has been received by the contact us method, that means we have come from the landing page. So what we need to do is we can say this and render. Now over here we have to define the view. So the view is home, and for the data we have to send the data, but let's ignore the data for the time being. And let's see if we are able to be redirected back to the same landing page. Let's refresh and click on this message, and we got redirected back to the same landing page. However, if you notice, the URL is contact us. However, because this is a landing page, so URL should have been home. However, we received contact us because that was the URL which processed the request in the first place. So contact us led us to this method contact us, and from there we are rendering this home landing page. But rendering itself does not change the URL. We have to change the URL as well. So this is one problem. The other problem is, let's start again. Let's go to the contact us form and let's submit the request, the contact us form. And if you notice, we have this same problem that we are seeing the landing page. However, the URL says we are at the contact us page. But let's refresh it and it's asking to resubmit the form. So this is another problem that the websites encounter, which is every time you try to refresh the page, it sends or submits the data all over again. So we could end up with multiple same requests in the database. This could slightly match to something like DOS attacks as well. Now we want to avoid this thing as well. So in order to avoid both of these issues, we have a pattern called PGR pattern. Sorry, not PGR, it's PRG. Post, redirect, and get. 3 steps. So when we submit the form, when we click on the send message, we are submitting the form through post method, HTTP post method. Then when that request gets received by this method, contact us, which is handling that request, then over here, instead of sending straight away reply like we are doing over here, we are sending the reply straight away. Instead of doing that, we have to redirect the customer to another URL. So instead of doing this, what we are going to do is that we are going to redirect the customer. So in order to redirect someone to a different URL, we have to use this header method, and it's going to be location colon, and the location is going to be, so for the location we have to say over here we have to provide the URL. So realtor, it's realtor, then we have backend, I think. Yeah, realtor backend, then public, and then home. So over here we are doing redirection. So we submitted the form through HTTP post request, then that request was handled by the server, and then instead of sending the response back, the server is redirecting us to another location. So this is part 2, redirection. Post, redirect. So this is the redirection. Then the last part is get. So because we are being redirected, and redirection happens through get request. So we are using this URL. When the server sees this redirection request, it will use get method to redirect us to that URL. So that's the pattern, PRG, post, redirect, get. Okay. So let's see if that is the case. That means we have successfully implemented this pattern. Let's start with the home. Let's come back to the contact us form, send the message. Now, as you can see, we again got redirected back to the home page. So now this has resolved both the issues. We are not only seeing the landing page, but we are seeing the correct URL in the address bar as well. And second is, if we refresh the page, we don't see this form resubmission request either. Request or notification. Okay, so this is part 1. The other part is, now we need to send the message informing the user if the request was processed successfully or not. So which is this part. Now because we are not using this render, so that means we can't send the message as a data and then message. We can't do this. So what's the solution? So the solution is going to be, So the solution is going to be, now since we know that once this request is handled, we get redirected to the home URL. So that means this request will eventually be handled by the, where is the index? So this home URL gets handled by this index method of this home controller. So let's open the home controller. So that means eventually this method is being called, and whatever data is being sent, that will be received by the home controller. Okay. So now over here we have to send in the data that we wanted to send through, the data that we wanted to send over here from this method. So we have to send this data through the home controller. So now the problem is, from this contact us method, we are interested in sending a message to our customer. But this contact us method is not handling the response. Rather, it's sending the redirection request, which eventually gets landed over here in the home controller's index method. So even if we have data over here, we can't send it to this contact us method directly. So we have to think of ways through which we can define some data over here, but somehow it's available over here in the home controller as well. And that magical thing is sessions, HTTP sessions. So if we define a session somewhere in any of the PHP files, it can be made available to all the PHP files. So to do that, we have to go to the index.php file. Now, since we know every request first gets received by this index.php file, so over here, we are going to start our session. So this enables the sessions in all the PHP files. So now let's go back to the home controller, and over here, let's define some session data. So over here, let's define some session data. So we are going to use two-dimensional array because we are going to have two different messages based on whether the email was sent successfully or not. So this is the first index flash, and this flash is going to be an array itself, and it can either have an index named success or it can have an index named error. So if it's a success, the message is your message was sent successfully, or it could be something went wrong, try again later. So basically we are creating a flash session variable and storing it in the session global data or global variable. And this flash is an array itself. It can have two elements, either with the index success or with the index error. So for the contact us, let's comment this out. So basically we are sending the message over here that your message was sent successfully. So we have created a session over here. Now when we go to the home controller, this will check if we have this session data available or not. If we have this session data available, we will send it along with this data. So let's create a separate private function which says get session messages, or make it flash messages, because this is going to act as a flash message. Now the flash messages are those messages which are available for just one request. So for example, if we send this request and hit enter, it goes to the server and it brings back the response which contains this whole page. But if it also contains flash data, then that data will be available with the response, of course. But the moment we refresh the page again, that data will not be available. So it's only available for one response. The moment you refresh the page, the data is gone. So that's why the name flash. It's only available for one flash moment. Okay, so over here, let's create a variable message, and it's going to check do we have a flash variable in the sessions. If it's there, then obviously the message will contain this message, otherwise an empty array. So to this message, we are storing either this flash data if it's available, otherwise an empty array. Then if it's available, we have to unset it because we only want it to be made visible just for one response. So to make it flashing data, we have to unset it. Copy, paste it over here, and now return the message. Okay, so over here now we have to send the flash data as well. This get flash message. So this flash will either be an empty array or it will contain the actual flash data. So this flash data is being populated with data in the contact controller, but it's being received in the home controller and sent to this home view. So now this flash data is being sent to the home view. So now let's open that home view. And over here at the end, first we have to check if we have this flash data. So if the condition is, now as we know that the data is going to be available through flash, so this flash is going to be the top level variable. In our case, it's an array, and to access its individual elements, we have to use the dot notation. So flash dot, we have two indexes, either success or error. So if we are going to check if it's success, if flash dot success is present, so let's create a class or div with the class name alert and alert hyphen success. So we have a div with two classes, alert and alert success, and within the body, we simply want to display the message. So copy, paste. Now copy this part and paste it over here. Now check for, instead of success, do we have error message present? So if it's error message, change the second class name from alert success to alert danger and display the message over here. So this div will be inserted in this section if this flash.success data is available. Otherwise, this div will not be inserted into this section. Then the second, this flash.error, if this data is present, then in that case, this second div will be inserted into this section. Otherwise, it will not be inserted. So save. Now let's go to the browser, refresh, click on the contact us, send the message, and it says something went wrong, try again later. So this is the message that we sent with the contact controller. We have sent success message. So why are we seeing the danger message? Let's refresh, contact, send. Okay, the message was sent successfully. I'm still not sure why were we getting the error message. Earlier, maybe I hadn't saved the file, the contact us file. Anyways, now if you see the message being displayed over here, that's because I have already defined the CSS styling for those alert and alert success and alert danger messages. So again, let's go back to let's close this property.twig for time being. Let's go to the home. So I have given these two classes, alert and alert success, alert and alert danger. So these are two divs for which I have already defined the styles. Alert. So this is, let's start with the alert. So this one contains the common properties for both of the alert divs. So width I have given 38 rems, height is 10 rems. Then for the border radius to give it round edges, the value is 10 pixels. Color is white. This is text color. Then position is fixed. That's why you can see at the very top. Then I have given top 15 rem and Z index is 10 so that it stays on the top. Font size is 1.8 rem. Display is fixed. So these three in total make the text centrally aligned. So if you notice these round edges, then the right is 2 rem. So basically from the right, there is a distance of 2 rem. So that's why and from the top, it's, what was it? The top was 15 rem. So from top, it's 15 rems down, and from right, it's 2 rems to the push towards the left. Okay. So this is the message we are seeing because I have already defined the styles. So these are the common properties to both of these alert messages. However, for the alert success, the background color is green, and for the alert danger, the background color is red. Okay. Then the next part is, now we want this message to be visible only for 5 seconds and then disappear, because that's the idea of a toast message. It appears only for a flashing moment of time. Then it's supposed to disappear. So let's go and define this logic in the JavaScript, because we can make this logic work through JavaScript. So in the JavaScript, we will use this fade out class, insert this fade out class so that disappearing transition is a smooth transition. You can see slight animated style of transition effect taking place. So for that, we have defined this fade out class where we are defining the transition for the opacity, and this transition should last 1 second. And basically it changes from opacity 1, the default one, to opacity 0. So it will not be visible in the browser and we will feel like it has been removed from the browser. So this is what it will do. So now we have to open the script.js file, and over here we are going to define an event listener for window, which is when the DOM contents are loaded. So then we want to define the function which should be triggered when the DOM contents are loaded. So we are going to define the setTimeout method. So this method will be called, and if you know, this setTimeout method takes 2 parameters. The first one is going to be the callback function, and the second one is going to be the time. So once that certain time duration is passed, the callback function, that is the first parameter, it gets triggered. So you define a function name over, so you define a function over here, and the second one is going to be the time. So let's put in 3000. 3000 means 3 seconds. So once these 3 seconds have passed, this function will be executed. So as far as this function is considered, we want to define the logic over here. So when 3000 seconds get passed, this function will be executed, the one we are defining over here. And over there, what we are going to do is that we are going to get a reference to this div. So document.query selector. Now we know both the divs, even though these are two different divs, but both of them have an alert class. So either this div will be inserted or this div will be inserted at a time, but both of them have alert class. So we are going to target this alert class. So query selector dot alert. So if there is a div with the class name alert, get a reference to it. Now this div is only going to be, okay, I forgot to give the name. Okay, so now this div is going to be present conditionally only when we have fresh data. Otherwise, this div will not be in the home class. So therefore, what we are going to do is that first of all, we are going to check if this div is present. So if alert, so if that is present, you want to attach this fade out class. So alert dot class list dot add, and the class name is fade-out. So when the DOM contents have been fully loaded, after 3 seconds, this function will get executed. And what this function is doing is that it's trying to get a reference to this alert div. And if this alert div is present, it's attaching this class, fade-out class, to that div. And what does this fade-out class do? It basically changes the opacity of this div from 1 to 0. And as a result, this will not be visible in the browser after 3 seconds. So let's refresh. Now if you notice, we don't have any message over here. This message only appears once we submit a form. So let's click on the contact us. Now submit the form, and this is a message. After 3 seconds, it will disappear, hopefully. So nothing. Let's refresh the browser. Okay, let's refresh. Contact us. Send the message, and we got the message. Let's hope it works. Oh yeah. So after 3 seconds, it disappeared. Earlier, it didn't disappear because of the cache data. But once we open the developer's tools, the cache gets erased. Okay, so this is what happens when we successfully send an email to the admin. Now, let's comment this part out. Uncomment it and comment this one. So this time, something went wrong and we didn't receive the email. The admin didn't receive the email. In that case, Ctrl-Shift-I to open the developer's tools, because we don't want to see the cache data. Click on contact us and again send the message. Now it says something went wrong, try again later. Okay, so we are seeing this. Now even though the div is invisible, opacity has been turned 0, but within the body, that div is still in the DOM. So these are the elements, and if you notice, this div is still there. We don't want this div once it disappears. So for that, we have to go back to the script.js file, and over here, after attaching this fade out class, we are going to say we want to basically remove this class. Now the problem with this statement, the way we have written it, if this is how we go about it, then what will happen is that this fade out class, it's supposed to take 1 second to complete. Over here, if you notice, we have said it should take 1 second to transition from opacity 1 to opacity 0. So that's why we see a decent fading out effect on the toast message. But if this is how we go about removing the div, then this div will be removed before that 1 second has passed. As a result, we will see an instant removal of the div rather than seeing a smooth transitioning effect. So we want this alert.remove to take place only after this fading out has taken its 1 second. Therefore, we have to place this statement within another timeout. So therefore, what we are going to do is that let's cut it and again use say timeout. The first param takes a callback function. So let's pass in the arrow function, and for the time, let's put in 1000. 1000 means 1 second. So let's repeat this logic once more. When the contents have been loaded fully, then this event listener will be triggered. And what this event listener is doing, it's executing this set timeout. Now this set timeout will execute this function, but only after waiting for it for 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds, this statement will be executed. Now once we enter into the body of this function, Then the first statement that we see over here is we are attaching the fade out class to the div, the toast div. And then we are saying wait for 1 second, and after that remove this alert from the DOM completely. So that's the logic. So refresh. And over here, let's go down to the contact us and send the message, and something went wrong. Try again later. Now it disappeared. Now let's check the section. Now in the container, if you notice, we don't have the section that we already had. Sorry, the div which already had alert div. We don't have this div anymore. But if we go there, click on the contact us and come back over here, and if you notice, we have this alert, and after a second it disappeared. So that's the JavaScript done as well successfully. It not only makes the div invisible, but it also removes it from the DOM. Okay, so this is one part. So we have successfully handled the toast messages for the landing page. Now we have to look into the properties, the details properties section. Click over here. So we also have this div over here, contact us form over here. Now we have two options over here. Let's click the send message over here, and we got redirected back to the home page. Now, if this is the behavior that you want, then you are done over here. You don't need to make any changes. However, if you want, let's click somewhere. If you want the behavior that when we click on the send message from the property details page, you want to be returned back or redirected back to the same page, then you have some work to do. So let's go to this macro again. Now over here, let's close this script.js file. We won't be needing it. And style.js CSS file as well. Let's open the macros file. And over here, the first thing that we want to do is from the parameter params to let's make it ID and give it default value 0. Now, the IDs of the properties in the database never start with 0. If it's 0, that means this form is supposed to go into the landing page. If the ID is anything other than 0, then basically the form is being displayed on the property details page. And since we have given this default value 0, that means we don't have to make any changes over here. Where were we inserting? This, we can keep it empty, because empty, when we keep this contact form empty, it means the ID will be 0. The default value will be given to it. Now over here for this action, we are going to have two values. So we are going to check if the condition is, if it's not ID, this not ID will be true when ID is 0. So if no ID has been given, in that case, this is the value that we want to give to the action. So paste it over here. Else the value of the action is going to be something else. So copy and paste. So basically when we want to submit the form over here, we want another method to handle that request. So for that, let's go back to the index.php file. We have to define another route. So let's copy paste it. Now the route is going to be inquire a property. So it's going to have the property ID as well. But we want this request to be handled by contact controller as well. However, the method is going to be inquire property. So copy this part, go to the contact controller, and let's define another method. Public function inquire property. It takes a parameter ID, and this is the body. Let's keep it empty for the time being. Let's go back to the macro. So now we know that the URL is going to be this inquire/ID. So come over here, and else action is going to be inquire/tilde sign for the concatenation and then ID. So this is going to be the actions value. Okay, and over here, let's come down to the text area, and over here, let's define a default message as well. Inquiring about, let's pass in another property name, and property name property. So this part is supposed to be only included if the form is present on the property details page. So that means we have to make it conditional as well. So Control X, and again place an if. Condition is going to be not if ID. So if the ID is present, then place in this message. This property name is the second parameter for the macro. Now because this second parameter will also not be present if the macro is inserted into the home page, so we have to give it default value, that is empty curly brackets. Okay, now let's refresh. Control Shift I, refresh. Okay, so we have to, before doing that we have to go back to the property because we have to pass in these parameters now. Okay, so this is the property twig page, and over here we are using the macro, calling the macro. So the first parameter is the ID, which is going to come from the data.id. Data.property name is going to be the second parameter, and data.property ID is going to be the first parameter. So data.property ID is the first parameter, and data.property name is going to be the second parameter. Save. Now refresh, and it's getting the default message in the text area inquiring about cozy apartment property. The rest of the information you can fill in whatever you want to do. Okay, so this part is done. Let me close it. Now let's go to the home page. So the contact form on the home page, our landing page, should not have this statement. Let's click on home, come back to the contact us form, and you can see it's empty over here, no default message. However, if you go to any of the property details page, it says inquiring about cozy apartment. This is the name which is coming from over here. Okay, so this part is done. Now we have defined the route. Close the macro. I don't think we need to make any more changes to the macro. So this is the route, inquire hyphen then the property ID, and this is a method. So let's go and define the logic for this inquire property. So this is contact controller, and basically we don't need to do anything different. We are going to copy these two lines and paste it over here. Let's change it to success. Copy, paste it over here. However, this time we don't want to be redirected to the home page. Rather, we want to be redirected to property / then this ID. So this will ensure we get redirected back to the property details page. Okay, so that means now we have to go to the property controller page and we have to make these changes, the ones that we have made over here. So let's copy this method. Copy. Now let's close this index.php file and open property controller. And at the end, paste this function. And over here, after the first parameter, that is data, we are going to send this flash data as well. So copy property controller and paste it over here as well. Okay, so this is the property controller done. Now we need to have the same divs that we have in the home.twig. So I am going to simply copy this part, both of these divs, copy, and let's open property.twig. And at the very end, let's paste in these two divs. So let's refresh. Oh, what's wrong? End block on line uncaught end block if tag defined near line 50 property.twig. Okay. Copy. I forgot to bring in this end if block for this if. Refresh. Okay. Now click on send. Your message was sent successfully and it disappeared. And we got redirected back to this ID. However, why isn't showing the number? Contact controller. Okay. Okay, so if we have to turn this into a dynamic variable, we need to enclose the text within double quotations. Single quotations will not do the trick. Paste it over here. Okay, good. Refresh. Send the message. Message was sent successfully and we have been redirected back to the same URL. Okay, so this part is done as well. However, if you notice, we can do a little bit refactoring. Now, if you notice, let's go to the home controller and we have used this private method over here and we have used the same private method in the property controller as well. So we can move this method to the controller class from which all the controllers are inheriting. So let's cut this part, delete it, save it. Now we don't have any method named getFlash message for the property controller. Let's go to the home controller and let's cut this part. Control X, save. Now we don't have this method for the home controller. Let's go to the controller class and over here paste this method. Now because this is in the controller class, we can't make this method private, otherwise the children will not have access to this method. So we are turning this into a public method. Now because home controller as well as property controller, both of them are inheriting from this controller class, so basically both of them have access to this getFlash method. So this getFlash method is part of both of these controllers as well. Just to verify, refresh. Let's open the browser. Okay, one more time, refresh and close the browser and send the message. And our logic is still working. Now let's go to the home page. Click send message and something went wrong, try again later. So the logic is still working. So with this, we are ending the series. Of course, there is room for modification and extensions, but you can do it on your own. As far as I'm concerned, this project is done. If you are interested in the source code, I will upload this project on Buy Me a Coffee page, and I will put the link in the description down below as well. Then you can get the code from there. But if not, everything is available through my videos as well. The choice is yours. So this is it. I hope you liked the series. If you did, please do not forget to comment, like, subscribe and share, and visit my channel for other such tutorial videos. Happy coding!